For centuries, the forest, streams, and rich fertile soil of what we now call the Northeast Shelby and Southeast Tipton counties have provided food and shelter for the inhabitants of this area. A nonprofit organization called Historic Archives of Rosemark and Environs, also known as HARE, has taken on the true mission of preserving the history, agriculture, and the culture of these people.
My name is Kerry Vaughn, and I serve as chair of HARE, which stands for Historic Archives of Rosemark and Environs. I've been a part of that wonderful board for the last 10 plus years. My good friend is with me today, Mr. John Strong, who's a walking history book for North Shelby County, specifically this area of Barrettville and Rosemark and Brunswick, and where we're sitting today at the Telephone Exchange Building.
Yes, this is where we made our telephone calls to communicate with the world.
I think that's a great way to say it, John. This was the hub. This was the center of communications, not only locally and not only for West Tennessee, but the entire world. This is where we touched the world, right here in Rosemark, and it's phenomenal because you know many of those families, and I do too, that say, well, my mother worked here, or my grandmother worked here, or as kids we would walk up on the front porch and throw rocks off the front porch and watch people drive by. This is the history that we're trying to restore in its original state. And I think that's a caveat, that we have restored this by partnerships and sponsorships to the original state. So when you walk in here, we're going to show this in a moment, you see exactly like it was many, many moons ago.
Yes, we were connected. If illness occurred or if someone was sick and we had to make a communication from the county to the city or to our relatives beyond the city, the telephone company was where we came.
Well, and that's amazing to me because as we walk through here in a few moments, we're going to see those original artifacts and resources and equipment and all the things, all the tools that they used back in the day that we're able to showcase today. You know, one thing I like about this, John, is that this museum is not just for the people who live here. It's for everybody. It's for all walks of life. It's for people that want to come and just show their appreciation to what was and what it can be. And so I want to invite everybody to come through here and to participate not only in the Telephone Exchange Building where we're sitting at today, but also across the street we have the Flippin' House and other wonderful venues that they can make a day in Rosemark, Tennessee.
The History Room has unique displays that tell the story of the Chickasaw tribe, the original inhabitants of this area. Learn more about the history and tools used by these early residents, as well as the Three Sisters agriculture technique practiced by the Native Americans.
Hello, my name is LaDonna Brown. I am Chickasaw and I work for the Chickasaw Nation. I serve as the Director of Anthropology in the Collections Division at the Chickasaw Cultural Center. Even though this area may be known as hunting grounds, at times it did contain settlements of our people. Our people lived in stationary communities in the western portion of what is now known as Tennessee. Land allotments were provided to our citizens so that they could sell their land to fund their way to Indian Territory. Many of those land allotments are found in the western Tennessee area. Sometimes archaeological evidence of hunting or fishing camps can be found along the waterways. Only hunters would journey to other areas. If it were in our homeland boundaries along the waterways, usually several families would create a fishing camp and stay for several weeks. Their homes would have been consisted of a summer and winter house, and a nuclear family would have consisted of a father, mother, and children. If the father and mother had a grown daughter who married, she and her husband would live in a summer and winter home built in close proximity to the bride's parents. Our summer homes would consist of a thatched roof with open gables, open sides, and a floor that was built approximately 2 to 3 feet off the ground. Sometimes boards would be added to the sides in case of heavy rain. The winter homes would have had the following construction. Poles were set into the ground equidistances apart from each other. Then a sturdy vine would be woven between those poles, much like a large basket. After the weaving of the vines took place, a roof was placed on top of the structure. The roof would be thatched. The walls would be completely covered with a mixture of clay, grass, and crushed shells. As Europeans began to travel into the interior of the Southeast and build short-term settlements, the unseen forces of deadly diseases took its toll on native populations. As the diseases came into our ancestors' communities, many of our people fell victims to the sicknesses. In 1818, a census was taken of the Chickasaw community by the Indian agent assigned to our community, and he reported there were a little less than 4,500 people listed. To some degree, our citizens are still dealing with many of the effects of the forced removal in this modern day. Because of events that occurred during, before, and after the forced removal, our citizens are greatly aware of government actions that took place. Most families have personal stories of events which occurred to someone in their family. Our citizens have a deep understanding of major events which affected our people, so that today many of them can discuss the forced removal as a matter of fact. Today, the Chickasaw Nation is located in the south central portion of Oklahoma, once known as Indian Territory. To learn more about the unconquered and unconquerable Chickasaw Nation, please visit the Chickasaw Cultural Center located in Sulphur, Oklahoma.
Although there was little combat action, the Civil War has significant impact on this area. Learn about the Raid of Barrettville and read about the personal accounts of every resident who witnessed or who were affected by this conflict.
Week before last, the Kansas Jayhawkers paid our neighborhood a visit. Took 3 of our best horses, leaving us with only 2 pieces of animals to work a crop with. Later in the week, a brutish, uncivilized set composed of Tennesseans, Mississippians, Alabamians, with some pure Yanks, commanded by one Colonel Fielding Hurst, came and done worse than I ever expected man of any civilized nation would do.
This room provides information about the reconstruction and development of a thriving freedman community.
Just out of slavery, with limited skills, no education, none other than what they had. And they had a number of children. But along came a teacher from the north named Mr. Merriam. He came into the area and went from house to house to teach people some of the skills that they needed to make a living. Immediately after slavery, the freedmen were given nothing to live on, so consequently they wound up living on farms, and they were free. The John Wesley Stewart home was the seat for community, and people from all walks of life came, and they had what was known as Grandma's Dinner. During Grandma's Dinner, they would come and share skills, what was going on the farms, how they were living, and what they were doing. With that, they were able to get a sense of community. And as they were able to get a sense of community, they were able to move into a decent living condition.
The telephone exchange room has been faithfully returned to its original condition with many of the original furnishings. Exhibits in this room help you imagine what it was truly like to use this brand new technology. Vintage instructional manuals and posters taught users telephone etiquette, how to talk on the telephone, or how to use it at its greatest advantage. Learn what it was like to share a party line with 5 or 6 other families, and even a gossipy operator who could hear every word that was spoken.
Often, the postman's wife would call the store and say, "Tell Robert to bring home a loaf of bread," or whatever. One day she called and told me they wanted bread, milk, and potatoes. And I said, "Wait a minute, I'll have to write that down." So I got my notepad and said, "Now you said you wanted bread, milk, and I've forgotten the third thing already. What was it?" So she laughed and said, "I can't remember it either." The operator came on the line and said, "It was potatoes." Buck Thompson.
We moved to Rosemark in 1948, and our mother, they called her Miss Bonnie, became a switchboard operator here. We recall her operating the switchboard. A flap would come down and she would take one of the cords and plug it in, and the flap would go back in. She would say, "Number, please." Whoever called would give some number or just say, "Call Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. Brown," or my mother would know right which cord to plug in a hole over here, and the hole where the flap fell down, and when she plug it in, the flap would go back up. In the beginning, she had a ringer down here at the bottom right. It might be a long ring and a short, or two shorts and one long, because we had party lines. There were 6 and 8 people on a party line. She would have to listen in to be sure when they were through talking. Otherwise, the cords stay plugged in, and the other people on the line could not use the phone. So once she would hear that they are not talking anymore, she would disconnect the two cords over here, and ready for another call. People would call, and of course, Mother knew everyone in Rosemark and Barrettville and Bolton and Kerrville because of the fact of the telephone business. They would call her and chat with her some.
She literally could look out the window, as you said, look over at Thompson's store and Hamilton's store, and if there was a truck or a car she recognized, people would call and say, "Is my husband up there at the store? Tell him to get bread." So she was the center of information here in this little town. There were 4 or 5 chairs against this wall, and as people would come in, and obviously not everybody in town had a phone, very few people had a phone. They'd come in and take turns using the public phone over here on the wall. I don't recall it being very private at all. You wouldn't want to say anything too personal because it would get out. And but they would take turns, and after so long, Mom would say, "Okay, next," and they'd go over there.
Miss Mama Winburn, she would come in at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon and work the night shift, and she was a busybody because she would listen in to a lot of the conversations, and she would spread this word all over Rosemark and Barrettville and Bolton and everywhere.
The telephone company was our first line of communication. For our relatives that lived in the city of Memphis, our line of communication was, if something happened, we had to come to the telephone company in order to make contact with people from within the city or beyond the city. This office is just as it was then. The only thing, there was a little booth that you would go in and close the door, and you would give Miss Winburn the number, and she would plug it in and connect you with whomever you wish to talk to.
The Stories Room houses the museum's greatest treasures, the many wonderful stories about life in this rural area. Exhibits show how residents lived, played, and learned. The Wall of Fame illustrates the accomplishments of residents who have had a great impact on their community. The Wall of Honor relates the stories of those who have served our country in times of crisis, both on the battlefield and in supporting roles at home. These personal recollections, as well as photographs and artifacts, tell funny, poignant, and inspiring stories from all residents.
When Harry was in training in Oklahoma before going into combat, there were 9 guys from Tennessee in his group. The guys all called them the Tennessee Hillbillies. They were sharpshooters. Harry and probably all of them received infantry badges, marksman badges. They were teased a lot because they were Southerners. One day when they were standing roll call, the officer said, "I have heard some people are making fun of the Southerners, but I want you to know that when you get into combat, you had better stick pretty close to them because they are sharpshooters."
We lived with ration books during the war years. Many things were rationed: sugar, chocolate, flour, shoes, hosiery, tires. Artificial sweeteners came about during this time. Folks were encouraged to plant a victory garden in the war years in order to have food for their families, so the commercial growers could grow more food for the military. Our families already had gardens, so it was nothing new to us. Ruth Blakey Billingsley.
Lastly, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for walking through this virtual tour with us. It is a beautiful museum, and I believe it's a museum for everybody. So, it's 50 people telling 50 people, telling 50 people to come and tour the Telephone Exchange Building. If you would like to help us financially, there's a website that will be provided below. You give and you invest in what really matters, preserving our history, but also propelling it forward for generations to come. Thank you so much. God bless you.